It's Dr. Tamika Works on all social media platforms. I am the founder of Connection Works and the Project We Are Free Foundation. In the Project We Are Free Foundation, we focus on helping women know the red flags of domestic violence and how to escape potentially deadly situations or relationships. And so I just wanted to stop in today. This video is entitled, Did You Know That? And so I wanted to stop in today just to share some vital information with you. So please feel free to like, share, and comment on the video. Hey, Selena, welcome, welcome. Thanks for coming in. And I also want to let you know, if you are someone you know or you're being abused, feel free to contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. Again, that's 1-800-799-SAFE, and those last four numbers, 7233. I share this information because you never know who could be suffering in silence, okay? And so I just wanted to stop through today to just ask you a few questions of, did you know that? So domestic violence and abuse, every single day in the United States, 3 to 4 women die at the hands of their husband or their boyfriend or fiance. And so you will hear me open with that statistic every single time I do one of these videos, because I don't think the majority of the people understand how tragic that number is. And so I did a post around Christmas time that said, while we are sitting around the tree and we're having, time with family and creating memories, there's going to be a woman, 3 to 4 women on Christmas Day, who will not have that same type of experience. And sure enough, that's what happened. So I wanted to ask you, did you know that the CDC reports that over 1 in 3 women in the United States experiences domestic violence and abuse in her lifetime? So that means that when you see a group of women, and you see 3 women or 8 women or 10 women, understand that when you see 1, 2, 3, she may be it. 4, 5, 6, she may be it. So understand that 1 in 3 women in her lifetime will more than likely experience domestic violence and abuse. Did you know that, and with this is just, we'll say, reported numbers, okay? Reported numbers state that Black women are 35% more likely to experience domestic violence and abuse than white women. And I say these are reported numbers because you know as well as I do that there are hundreds of thousands of women who are being abused, but for whatever reason, they haven't gotten the courage to get up the nerve to say, let me call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, to get the number to my local women's shelter, or just to flat out call 911, reach out to a family member, or go to the hospital because they are being abused. And understand that women who oftentimes stay in domestic violence and abuse, it's not because of a lifestyle. That is a myth. No one wants to just stay in that. A lot of times it is mental. It starts out mental, and she is mentally and emotionally broken down. While people at all income levels experience domestic violence and abuse, those earning, and again, these are reported numbers. It does not mean that it is a true representation of the actual cases. But while people at all levels of income are affected by domestic violence and abuse, people earning lower incomes experience domestic violence at a higher rate, according to the numbers, than those with higher household incomes. It's not saying that it doesn't happen in higher household incomes, but it does. These are what the numbers reflect. Women with household incomes of less than $7,500 are 7 times more likely as women with a household income over $75,000 to experience domestic violence and abuse. I apologize for that. Okay, so there we go. So understand that these are just the reported numbers. It does not mean that if you are lower income that you are abused more. It just means that the reports, hey, Brittany, thanks for coming in. It just means that the reports to the hospital or to the police happen to be higher and documented because people with a higher income are probably, as we can see from the numbers, not calling the police. Not saying it doesn't happen, because it does happen. It's just not reported. National statistics show that at least 45% of domestic violence survivors report being sexually assaulted by their abuser. So guys, feel free to like, share, and comment on this video, because you never know who could be suffering in silence. You never know, you may be having a conversation with someone who overhears your conversation, and this could very well save their life. There are women who say, you know, hey, Jackie and Laura, thanks for coming in. There are women who say, like, I never knew what the term domestic violence and abuse was. I never knew that, you know, the 45 years that I spent in my marriage, that I was being raped because he was my husband, even though he was forcing himself on me. So understand that domestic violence and abuse is very, very real. It's very real. These women are not making up these stories. The abuser I dealt with, try. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and you've got to be so very careful even after you escape, because they will sweet talk you into coming back into the relationship so that they can do you 10 times worse than when you first escaped. So you've got to be very, very careful with that. Let's see here. Domestic violence and the connection to homelessness. So for those of you who have been following, hey, Mary Joanne, thanks for coming in. Yep, that's the best way to do. Block them, no contact, okay? So understand this. For those of you who have been following me for some time, you know my story about how when I fled, I thought if I could get into the shelter, then I could immediately start to rebuild my life, but the shelter was full. So when a woman leaves an abusive relationship, she oftentimes has nowhere to go. And for many, many women, let me see here. I'm trying to keep up with the comments. Okay, so for many women, the only choices that she has really is staying in the abusive environment with her abuser, going to a shelter, or living on the streets. And oftentimes when the shelter is full, she'll go back to her abuser. Studies have shown a connection between domestic violence to homelessness, and particularly with women who have children. Women who have children, and especially women who have more than one child, they end up homeless and on the street as a result of domestic violence and abuse. So domestic violence oftentimes leads to homelessness, but it doesn't mean that she's staying with her abuser because of the lifestyle. She may be staying longer with her abuser because she doesn't want her child to be homeless on the street. You know, she may say, well, if it was just me, I would just go, it's okay for me to be homeless. But for those of you who are mothers, or you have nieces and nephews, you know that feeling that you have of protection, where you want to make sure that your, you know, the children that you care for and love are protected. Hey, Ramona, thanks for coming in. And so, Again, domestic violence leads to homelessness. Shelters do provide safety, respite, and other support services, but unfortunately, the shelters are often full and they often turn away women and children. There are more animal shelters in the United States than there are I thought I turned that off. Than there are shelters for women and children of domestic violence who are trying to escape. And so oftentimes when we hear of a woman who has been murdered as a result of domestic violence and abuse at the hands of her boyfriend, her husband, or her fiance, and you say, well, why didn't she leave? She may have tried to leave 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. But when she got to that shelter, the shelter was full. So instead of staying out on the streets with her children and not having an address for her children to be registered for school, she goes back to the abusive environment. Because I'm not sure if you are aware of this, as the title said, did you know that if a woman is out on the street homeless with her children and the school finds out, okay, if she doesn't have an address to register the kids in school, oftentimes the children are put into foster care. And let's be honest, sometimes that's not the best situation for those children. It may be better for her and her child to take the risk of going back to the devil that they know than for the child to be just in this foster care home in possibly a worse situation for the child. So this mother she's trying to make the very best decision that she can make when it's the worst. It's like picking, what is it? The best of the worst. The best of the worst. Choosing between two evils. That's the thought I was looking for. It's like choosing between two evils. And then she's got to fight the system to try to get her kid back. She's got to fight the system to try to get housing, get a protection order, try to prove that she's being abused. And it's just so much red tape and so much overwhelm. And you've got to keep in mind that she was mentally and emotionally abused, and he's broken her down. Her poor little self-esteem has been bent down to nothing. And she's trying to do all of this on her own and by herself. And the last thing that a woman who is trying to escape from domestic violence, the last thing she needs is to hear someone telling her, well, you should have left a long time ago. Well, why didn't you leave? She doesn't need to be further condemned, because what happens is she's being victimized and abused by her abuser. That's one. Then two, when she finally wakes up, smells the coffee, and realizes, okay, this is the straw that has broken the camel's back. I'm done. I've had enough. Then she re-abuses by abusing herself. She beats herself up. I should have seen this. I should have known that. And she continues to beat herself up. And that's why I stress to so many of you, you got to be kind to yourself when you are leaving an abusive situation. Be kind to yourself. So first she's abused by her abuser, then she self-abuses because she's beating herself up, because she's like, how did I allow him to disrespect me like this? How did I allow her to do these different things to me? Him to do these different things to me? And then she reaches out to what she thinks is her friend, or reaches out to family members to say, hey, this is what's happening to me. And then she's met with, well, why don't you just leave? You should have left. Why would you allow him to do it? Why would you? And then she's further broken down. Then she goes to the shelter thinking, if I can just get to the shelter, maybe I can rebuild my life. Maybe I can finally breathe just a little bit. And then she gets to the shelter only to be turned away because there are no beds available. There's nothing they can do for her. So she's turned away. And if she's lucky enough or blessed enough to have a car, she and her children may stay in that car for however long until she ends up saying, you know what, guys, we've got to go back for a little while longer. Because there is, for the most part, at most shelters, there's not a waiting list sometimes. It's a first come, first serve, depending on who shows up. So sometimes you can get your name on a list and sometimes you can't. Sometimes they tell you they've got a bed for you, but not for your kids. So what is she to do? But what she doesn't need is for people to judge her, to shame her. She's already feeling ashamed and embarrassed. She's already feeling those things. She knows. It's just that she feels trapped. And especially if she's being financially abused, where he makes all of the money or where he's controlling all of the money. So she's been broken down. Hey, Jean. So she's been broken down. So I'm just asking that if a woman comes to you to say, hey, I'm being abused, tell her, I believe you. I believe you. That's number one. And just have compassion. I'm not saying that you can't give her advice or share something enlightening with her, but it's not so much what we say, it's how we say it. It's how it's said. And so if she feels as though she's already made all of these different mistakes, she knows. She doesn't need anyone else to tell her how horrible he is or what she could have done to prevent it. The best thing to do is start figuring out a plan, because even though she may be turned away from the shelter as far as the housing goes, she would still be able to go back to that very shelter the following day during their, business hours to get information so that she can get back on her feet and get her life together, even get somewhere where she knows that she can be safe. Because there are underground networks, which I won't talk about that, but there are other resources aside from the shelter. Okay? So understand that. It just bothers me sometimes when, I post and people are just like, well, she should have left. Well, it's not the pastor's fault. It's her fault. Like, how is it her fault when she reached out for help? And I'm not saying that it's the pastor's fault either, because how do you know what you don't know? He's working in good faith. She's thinking she's doing the right thing. So if we can get the information out there so that more people know the red flags of domestic violence and abuse and understand the dynamics of it, then the pure and true meaning of ignorance, we can just kind of have it dissipated so that people can be armed with the knowledge that domestic violence and abuse is not just someone slapping, choking, kicking, biting, or hitting. It consists of, as we've talked about, flying monkeys, word salad, gaslighting, love bombing, manipulation. It has all of those different components. And the list actually goes on and on and on. Emotional abuse, verbal abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, because it does occur within marriages and relationships. Rape is not just something done by, thank you so much, Jackie. Yeah, guys, like, share, and comment just to make sure we get this message out. But it's not just done by a stranger. So just understand that. So if there's anyone who's being abused, or you think you may be abused, or you know someone, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-SAFE. And the last four digits is 7233. 3. So I hope that this information has helped someone, has enlightened someone, and has saved a life or several lives. I thank you all for being a part of this movement. I am Dr. Tamika Works on all social media platforms. I thank you for being here live, because you could be anywhere else, but you chose to be here with me. So replay viewers, drop a hashtag replay in the comment section to let me know you got a hold of this important life-saving information. And be sure to like, share, and comment. Peace, love, and blessings to each and every one of you. And please be safe.